Welcome to the Lessons from Your Hairstylist podcast, where we uncover and leverage your unique beauty and personal style. I'm your host, Sarah Cruz, a beauty industry educator and hairstylist with 30 years experience. This show is dedicated to providing you with insights and practical advice for living a happier, healthier, and more fulfilled life. Experience that special stylist-client bond right here as we dive into conversations with experts in beauty and wellness. Here, you'll gain valuable tips on personal style and self-care to empower your journey. Join me to unlock the secrets to living beautifully well while elevating your lifestyle, mind, body, and spirit. Your appointment is now, so have a seat and get ready for transformation. Well, hello and welcome to the Lessons from Your Hairstylist podcast. I'm your host and hairstylist friend, Sarah Cruz. And today I'm excited to have on a friend of mine and also a very accomplished stylist out of Easton, Pennsylvania at J. Morgan Salon Company. She is actually a hair loss practitioner studying trichology. So trichology is, I will let her tell you, but it's actually the study of hair loss and those types of disorders. So for any of you that may be dealing with shedding, that seems to be a little bit more than what you might think might be normal. If you are dealing with hair loss, any sort of alopecia, if you're just struggling with your hair in general, being like super fine, very thin, and it's just something that's been plaguing you, I think you're going to find a lot of value in this episode. I've known Caitlin for quite some time, probably 10 years, I would say, wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so whatever she does, she's all in as far as like just really getting to the nitty gritty and down to the details of the issue. And she became interested in studying trichology within the salon and helping her clients deal with this issue. So I wanted to bring her on, introduce you to her. I think you're going to find the information that she provides very valuable if this is something that you struggle with, or if this is something that you know that a friend struggles with, maybe your partner. Maybe you could share this episode with them as we dive into the subject and find out all about it. And maybe you can get a little bit of a glimpse inside of what it is that you in particular may be dealing with so that you'll have the resources going forward to know how to address any challenges that you may be having. So let us get right into it. Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on my very new podcast. I so appreciate you taking the time. We had a little bit of technical difficulties the other day, so we're back on. Thank you for all of your patience. Could you please tell everyone just a little bit about yourself, about what it is that you do? And I know you're a hairstylist, but just kind of about your journey as a hairstylist and your journey into trichology.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a stylist for around 11 or so years. So pretty much the time I've known Sarah. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I just had more and more clients who were struggling with hair loss or scalp problems. And besides kind of the baseline that I learned in cosmetology school and what we heard from our product reps, I didn't have a ton to offer them besides, you should consult your doctor, dermatology, here's things that could or could not help. But I wanted to better help them figure out what might be causing the hair loss. And I still can't diagnose, I can't say, hey, you have a medical disorder or anything like that. But hair loss can look differently based on what could or could not be causing it. And so I was able to helping them with other solutions besides just what I could in the salon, or just maybe answer some questions and just kind of give them some other ways to go about it. And so that's kind of what first got me into it. I'm pretty sure it was a TikTok or something, and a woman saying, as a certified trichologist, I would never blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, what is that? And I want to know if I agree with you or not. And so I took a course. So yeah, I took the hair loss practitioner course through the U.S. Trichology Institute, which would be the first step to becoming a trichologist. I stopped at hair loss practitioner because I wasn't looking to fully, change careers. I just wanted to better help serve my clients. As it's becoming more popular, I think we're seeing more people either talk about hair loss or open up about it. I think it's always been, around. I just think people are talking about it more, which is awesome. They're looking at it as the bridge between cosmetology and dermatology. So it's kind of helps bridge that gap.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that. And I can relate to what you're saying as far as having clients come in and there's only so much you can do, right? As a hairstylist, you can suggest products, you can recommend at-home care, you can give them all the advice on the planet, but if they're dealing with something beyond what you're able to really help them with, it can be frustrating, not only for the client but also for you because you feel limited in the help that you can give them. And so knowing that there are hairstylists out there such as yourself who are, like you said, sort of bridging that gap between being a hairstylist and almost going over into the dermatology field just a little bit to understand more deeply what's going on at the root of the cause. No pun intended, but
Yeah.
actually, pun intended. But like to understand what exactly could be at the base of causing the issue so that you can help them a little bit further, at least make suggestions or provide them with further resources beyond the salon. I think that that is something that more and more stylists may get into as we see that, as you said, something that people haven't really been addressing or talking about until maybe a little bit more recent years. Maybe that's something that becomes more common that hairstylists will start to address these very specific issues that clients have. And I think that that would help us as professionals to give a more well-rounded experience to our clients. So I love that you have that specialty. Tell us a little bit about like just yourself and a little bit about your background. Before we go a little bit further, I would just love to know like how long have you been in the industry and, kind of like what are some of the things that we should know about you? If a client was coming to you in particular, what would be the draw and kind of like a little bit about yourself personally?
Yeah. So I've been a hairstylist for a little over 11 years. Definitely wasn't my first avenue out of school. I tried a lot of things first, but kind of searching for something that drew me in, definitely always liked some sort of mix between science and art. And that's where I found being a hairdresser. And you also get to interact with people. And a lot of the other industries I looked at, you work by yourself and things like that. And so I'm definitely a people person. I'm more of a front of the house person. I want to interact. Definitely have always been I have to know why. I've been very science driven. I think my Enneagram would tell you that as well. Always
We did
needed to
that whole
know.
thing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, needed to know the why. I needed to know the science behind it. I always thought, I was a rule follower as long as I understood and knew the rule, kind of a thing. So not definitely something that pushes my boundaries, but I have to understand why that's in place. And so that kind of was what drew me in. And so my
I
clients, I
can
think,
see that
kind
being such a
of
perfect thing for you because you being that kind of person, I can see now like why you went into the trichology
yeah,
portion of it because you're like, okay, I need to understand why this hair loss is happening. Why is this person's
exactly.
hair thin? Like, what is going on here? So I can help.
And, not all my clients love it, but some of them get really excited about it. Like, have you learned anything new? And we'll sit there and I'll blabble, hair science at them, whether it's, color theory and things like that. And some of them love it. Some of them are like, can we talk about, Posts and People magazine and, things like that. And that's fine. I'll do that too. But I think I find the people that find it fascinating like I do. So,
Right.
yeah.
I think what makes some of the best hairstylists are some of the nerdier ones, like not in a bad way, but like when we have something that we really like nerd out on, it just
Mhm.
really, you can tell that it comes from a place of a passion. It comes from a place of being super interested, super curious. And I think that those are the people that really provide like the highest level of service because they're just all in on it. And so I've always loved that about you because you are in every area of whatever it is you do. You've got to know all the details. You want to know the whys, all of that stuff. So you've always been that way. And I can see where this would be just really a great area of focus for you and something that you'd be able to help a lot of people with. There are different sort of challenges. There's all different types of hair loss, as I understand,
Mhm.
but then there's just people who have, I guess, thin, fine hair. Can you explain a little bit about hair loss as opposed to just being someone who genetically has like thin, fine hair and some of the details in, both of those areas?
Yeah. So having thin or thinning hair is, and we would call it alopecia. Alopecia just is a blanket term for hair loss or excessive hair shedding. So someone who is actively thinning, meaning they are losing more hair than normal. They're losing more of their dormant hairs than a normal person will lose a higher percentage. Having just fine, thin hair means that you have just a low density or you have very individually fine hairs. And there can be a mix. You can have someone who has low density, but with coarser hair. My mom's one of those. She's got big curly hair, but when it's wet, it like completely disappears. She probably doesn't have that many more follicles than I do. Her individual hairs are just so much larger than mine.
Okay.
And she might even have 2 hairs per follicle, like some people with thicker hair have, where I have more of like a medium to fine textured hair, but I have like an average density. So it looks fine. So there's lots of things that can make up what is on your head naturally. So someone who has low density naturally, which is how many follicles are kind of per square inch on your head, and your hair happens to be finer, you're just not going to have as much hair to work with.
Right. Or kind of like coverage or,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like you said, as much sort of substance there to
Yeah.
do anything.
I always like to kind of make a tree analogy because I just think sometimes people like a visual, everyone has their plot of land and some people grow big, large trunk trees and other people grow those trees that are like those wispy little trees that fly around. But even with a big tree, if you have a low density, you can see between the trees.
Oh, that's such a good
Someone
analogy.
who has those fine, woohoo trees or whatever I call them, if they're really close together, you're still not going to be able to see through those trees because they're really packed in tight. So someone with fine hair can still have a really high density.
That is such a good visual reference to make. I think when you think about density, when people think of thick and fine or thick, coarse hair, it's sometimes hard to understand the difference. So
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying is that the tree trunk itself would be the coarseness or the fineness of hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then the amount of trees like on the land would be the density. That's so good to kind of understand that. And so, yeah, we're all different. So we all have different. So then when do you know that, okay, well, I just have low density and fine hair as opposed to, okay, I'm really dealing with an excess of shedding that is maybe not normal. And I'm dealing with actual hair loss here. When does somebody really know the difference?
And it can definitely change on what's causing it. But typically you'll notice if there's a difference because I think it's like 50 to 150 hairs a day, depending on your density. It's what's a normal shedding. Now, if you're wearing your hair back or pulled, you might notice, more at once because they're detaching, but not fully falling out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're starting to notice, like as you're partying, seeing more scalp than normal for you, right? That could be that you're shedding abnormally. I mean, yes, if you're seeing it in the shower in your hairbrush, but that can also just be circumstantial. But then if it is a hereditary hair loss, which we call androgenic, so that would be male or female pattern baldness. I hate calling it female pattern baldness because most women, and it does happen to women, but it's not true baldness. But so we're going to call it genetic hair loss. It'll be actually a widening of the part starting behind the hairline and getting out larger like a Christmas tree. And there are charts that help that where men notice it in the crown or different areas of the head. So if you're seeing patches of hair gone, then that's another indicator that something is going on and it could be different types of hair loss. But typically, if it's not going to be either a autoimmune disease or genetic hair loss, it is going to be sort of dispersed equally throughout, which we would call diffuse.
Okay.
Hair loss, which just means it's kind of all over. It can still concentrate around the hairline, and that's not for any other reason besides the hair in the front of our head is wimpy. anything
Mhm,
doesn't go its way and it kind of puts up the white flag and just like, I'm not growing today.
mhm,
Which is why people, I think I'm receding, or like even postpartum, they notice so much more hair loss around their head. It's not because they're losing it there specifically. They're probably losing it throughout. It's just that hair is wimpy. Why
mhm.
when they do hair transplants, they take it from the back of the head and pull it forward. It's not just because you can hide that area. It's because that hair tends to be more sturdy and resilient.
Okay,
And
okay.
this hair here isn't.
Yeah, I mean, I deal with that too, and I know that it doesn't grow in the front as long.
Mhm.
The hair tends to, I think, replace itself too quickly before it has a chance to get long, which I've also researched and found out that people can have different growth phases genetically. So,
Mhm.
can you just go over that a little bit about like what what the cycle is like for hair and what could interrupt it and what could cause an issue there to cause either premature shedding or even like an alopecia situation?
Yeah, so your hair goes through different growth phases. I'm going to try not to use too many of the clinical words, but pretty much you have an active phase or a growing phase. And that on average, you'll be about 1 centimeter every 28 days. And that lasts different for everybody, which is why, as far as we call it, permanent hair, not vellus hair. Vellus hair is that little baby hair you get like on your face and on your
Mhm,
palms of your hands. That's a very
mhm.
short cycle. And that hair is also not attached to the root sheath where your eyebrows and your hair on your head is. That hair has different growing lengths, which is why your eyebrows don't grow down to your chin. It has a short growing phase before it goes
Okay,
dormant. The
okay.
hair on your head has a longer growing phase, but not everyone's is equal, which is why some people can grow their hair down to here and my hair stops around here. And I can get some that grow longer, but not really.
Right.
And definitely that's where something like the hair, skin, and nail supplements can help people is even if they might not help regrow hair that's gone, it can help that hair grow faster in your already set time that your hair grows so it can reach a longer length. It's going to come out faster, kind of a thing. So after its active phase, your hair goes into a transitional phase or starts going into its dormant phase where it's not shedding yet, but it's just hanging out. So it grows for a certain amount of time and then it goes dormant and then eventually goes into its shedding phase. They used to just say growing, dormant, shedding, and that was kind of it. But they've started kind of breaking down the shedding phase into two different phases because your resting phase hair, it's normal to shed 25 to 100 hairs, but then it actually goes into one more phase where it all will shed. So in that dormant phase, the babying of the hair and kind of not tugging and pulling can create that hair to not shed as fast, but it is eventually going to shed because it's going to detach that root and make room for another hair. So it will always shed, but that's where some of those, not pulling and tugging, that last phase usually lasts about 100 days, which is, I mean, that's a third of a year. That's a good amount of time.
Right.
And that's where not pulling and tugging and things like that can sometimes help keep those hairs,
In place
superficially.
a little longer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't think I realized that anything actually did help extend the growth phase or the I guess I don't know what phase that's called, but
Don't necessarily, there's claims on these things that they'll help that. That's not really proven, but if your hair is growing faster, it'll get longer in the same amount of days it would have normally grown. So instead of growing 1 centimeter every 28 days, maybe you're getting 1.5 because you're taking something that's causing your hair to grow faster. But let's say your hair would normally grow for 100 days and then stop. I mean, depending on what your cycle would be, if you're getting more growth in that time, it could possibly get a little longer.
that is interesting too because I didn't realize that there was actually anything you could do to get your hair to grow faster.
Mhm.
What are some things that someone could do to get their hair to grow faster? I honestly thought that that was not
So, I mean,
not really possible. So I'm excited,
yeah,
like, please tell me.
and they're all about the same, but like over the counter hair, skin, and nail supplements. I mean, it's very circumstantial. Some people see great results with it, some people don't. I think a lot goes into it, but as long as your hair is not actively thinning. So if it is in a weird extra shedding phase, something like that isn't necessarily going to help until your body has regulated itself. But that's how these, Nutrafol and these other brands are promoting such hair regrowth. It's not, at least in my research, I'm not going to say anything, not helping hair that isn't wanting to grow, but it's encouraging your hair that's already growing to do more. It's giving your hair kind of the food it needs.
Mhm.
Same thing with just like stimulating your scalp. That's how those shampoos work. It's activating the hair. It's making it excited. There are also these, and I'm sure we'll talk about them again later, but
Yeah.
low level light devices. Those also can help your hair grow faster and healthier, but those actually, unlike some of the other stuff, can help hair regrow as well. Obviously, given that it's not in an active shedding phase, but this one actually can kind of help simultaneously. But a low level light device, they look differently, but they use red diodes, which are different than an infrared light. But they basically go and instead of taking a supplement, the lights stimulate blood flow and stimulate the area underneath not the cuticle, but underneath the bulb or the root sheath of the hair, where it gets its nutrients and increases it right at the source. So you're getting 4% more of what your hair needs, and it's creating it right at the scalp under the surface of the skin. So these low light level light devices, put one more L in there, right? Help your body kind of make its own, I guess, vitamin is what I like to kind of think of it as, but right there at the source. So it's not having to go through your digestive tract and everything like that. But those actually have tons and tons of like clinical trials and things like that actually show tons of not only just hair growth, but hair regrowth. So those are
Oh,
a really good option as well.
wow. Well, I remember when you first took this training, and I was very interested because, as you know, I suffer with, and I think this is maybe one of the reasons why I want to cover this myself is because I've encountered other
Yeah.
clients who have dealt with this type of thing, but I've always had these sort of thin hair struggles, short hair growth struggles.
Mhm.
And, when you were talking about was this a cap? You said it was like a,
There's different types. The at-home ones tend to be caps. There are cones and things too, but caps
okay,
more, yeah, for the at-home. And then in salon versions can look like the big, almost like the heaters that we have, but they're
okay,
sheets of the red diodes, and those are obviously going to be stronger, but they have different versions of them. But the at-homes, yeah, are usually some sort of a cap.
okay. So you could do this as an in-salon treatment, or also you could purchase a cap.
Little pictures.
I have a visual.
Little
Okay.
caps, headbands,
Yes.
combs, and then this would be like an in salon.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So how would someone go about finding this type of a device or find someone who would offer something like this to them?
I had some clients when I first did it looking for them. A lot of dermatology offices do have access to selling these. You can also find them online. You just want to check the strength of them.
If you do purchase this online, would this be something you could get from maybe Amazon, or would you have to
They
go to a,
definitely have versions of them on Amazon.
and would those be effective, or would you need to get a specific type or?
You would just want to make sure whatever type you're getting is offering 120 to 185 diodes, which I know sounds like a word that no one knows what it means, but it will say it on the packaging. It's just the strength. Typically, the stronger ones are going to be suggested for twice a week for 30 minutes. Your at home ones are going to do every other day or 3 to 5 times a week. And they'll say that on there. More is not better. You need the resting time in between. And you just want to check with it. But that's where even going, if you have a dermatologist or someone near you that has some devices you can look at, kind of look at what their potency, what they're showing. And then, yeah, go online, see what you can find. It is sort of, yes, there's going to be different strengths of them, but if they're putting out red light diodes, it's the same technology. Sort of like minoxidil is minoxidil no matter who's selling it. It's now there's 3 and 5%, but it is what it is. Same with these red light diodes. The technology is what it is. It's just how many diodes, how much strength are you getting? The more you're getting, you might have to do it as often, but also the more results you see. If you're buying a less expensive one, which I understand they can get very pricey, they're an investment, you're not getting as much stimulation, as much blood circulation. So you just might not be seeing results as quickly.
Do you know what the range in cost is between them, roughly?
The ones I remember seeing, they range from like some of those combs and kind of like lower ones are a couple $100s, but they definitely go upwards to like $2,000 or $3,000 for a cap.
Well, do they have any studies that show what the percentage of effectiveness is, or how effective they are? What can someone expect when they're using a device like that? I know, like you said, it depends probably upon the strength and the probably the quality of the cap or the device that they're using. But what types of results are people seeing from these devices?
So I have some of the clinical studies here. This was used in a lab, so they were definitely using the stronger laser, or not lasers, the diodes. But in this one, it said 100% of the subjects saw increase in hair growth, which to me can mean anything.
Right.
But 97% saw an increase of hair count greater than 20%. 77 saw an increase of hair count greater than 51%. So just how much? 51% increase in hair count. So that was growing hair. In that same study, they said 93% of people got an average of 19 new thick hairs per centimeter of scalp area in 6 months. And they saw that the best results started to show between 12 and 24 months, so that is quite a while. But hair growth takes time. But I mean, even in a 6-month span time, having 19 new hairs per 6 centimeters on your head is quite a bit of hair. They're going to be short new hairs.
Right. But for someone that doesn't even have coverage, that could just be huge.
That could be huge. Yeah. And I find the why, again, very interesting. But they originally started this research with these red light diodes for skin. Obviously, they're in a lab. They're working on little mice and they would shave them and put these red light diodes on them to see the increase in their area on their skin. And when they were using the different light frequencies, the ones that were using these red diodes, they were having to keep shaving them because the hair was growing back so fast that they couldn't actually see the reaction on the skin. And it ended up not being a good cure or help for skin cancer and skin problems. But they're like, well, dang, it keeps growing the hair back so fast. Like, what about it for hair growth?
Right. Always how it happens with this stuff is like they find it for some other reason. And
But yeah, I have pages and pages of them, but those are kind of the top ones.
And then those studies, they were done where?
These were done by the International Society for Hair Restoration Surgeons Conference.
Okay. Yeah. So that's so interesting to know that the hair, there is actually something that you can do, like even at home, and you're not just always, I guess, doomed to have a thin hair, or to be seeing your scalp, or there are treatments out there, and it can also not always have to be surgical. The devices sound like, and I know that was one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I was also interested in those early on when you were talking about your training. And I thought that there would be other people that would find that to be very interesting too, and maybe helpful. Can that work for men and women?
Yes, that could definitely work for men and women, and is approved for all types of hair loss, except for obviously like scarring, permanent hair loss that isn't coming back.
Now, what type of hair loss would that be that doesn't come back?
So scarring is going to be burns, autoimmune disease, like so inflammation that just killed that follicle, things like that. Most hair loss is reversible. Now, if you've let your thinning hair go, especially if it's like male or female pattern baldness, and you get that hard, shiny scalp, that has now become scarring alopecia most
Okay.
likely. So you still have to have a little bit of hair going, because once those follicles are dead, there's not usually a lot of reviving them. Not meaning that there can't be some success due to different things, but most other hair loss is reversible. The scarring is usually due to an autoimmune disease, burns, things like that, trauma to the follicle that just is not reversible. But most other hair loss can be
Okay.
reversed.
That is very interesting to know that most hair loss can be reversed. I've
Well,
seen
and reverse might be a little strong. There's hope for most hair loss. You may not get every single thing back, but it can be
Right.
helped. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. So
Okay.
reverse might be a strong word, but
Okay.
a lot of, yes,
It's treatable,
it's
maybe.
treatable. Yes,
Okay.
treatable better. And as long as we're talking about that, and I know just from your experience too, as far as like hair regrowth, right? The lights have been proven. Other things can help assist, but I know I mentioned it too, minoxidil is the only other really thing proven to make hair grow that's not growing.
Mhm.
I had clients that experienced this, and I know you did.
Mhm.
85% of people give up on it
Mhm.
that start minoxidil, and not because they didn't see results, but a lot of people get frustrated with it for one reason or the other. But actually, most people stop it because it's so high in alcohols. A lot of people end up with irritated scalp.
Mhm.
You need to use it strong enough. I actually had a couple of guests develop not an allergy, but like a reaction that then swelled the hair and they lost everything that they got. So it's not that minoxidil's bad
Mhm.
by any means. It definitely does what it says, but that's where the struggle comes in, that because that's topical,
Mhm.
a lot of people end up having an irritation to it. There also is a drug that you have to go get from your doctor. It's only approved for men, and it's called Propecia. And the only reason I bring it up is because it stops your body from creating the hormone that causes genetic hair loss. It's only approved for like 5 to 8 years. It's only approved for men, and it's kind of gnarly. So I'm like, wouldn't even look into it for for me personally. But the only reason I even bring it up is because it stops your body from creating DHT instead of blocking it. But a DHT blocker is something you can actually buy over the counter. Had people get it on Amazon.
Mhm.
Um, and that is actually going to just block the hormone in your body from helping your genetic hair loss take root. So,
Because DHT, that is a hormone, you're saying?
so people that are privy or have genetic hair loss, it can be caused early from stress, but it's usually around, a certain age, 40, 50, 60s, depending. It again, definitely can start earlier, younger, especially in men. Your body, both men and women have testosterone. So your body starts converting testosterone into DHT. And what happens is the DHT kind of floats around harmlessly in your system, except for the fact that, so at the bulb, the circle at the bottom of your hair, there's your androgen receptors, and that's like the little tunnels that your hair gets its blood, oxygen, nutrients, everything it needs to grow. The DHT is shaped in a way that it actually attaches to the bottom of those receptors and blocks your hair from getting the oxygen and nutrients it needs. So the
Mm.
hair shrinks, becomes fine first, and eventually dies because it
Mm.
can't get what it needs. So the DHT blockers, the over the counter ones, all they do is go in and put these little like bracket looking things, if you look at it on like a microscope, on those androgen receptors so the DHT can't attach. So they
Mm.
don't block any of that flow. They just stop the DHT from attaching.
Mhm.
If you are having some sort of a genetic hair loss, I would suggest that first before investing in other things like a light system, things like that,
Mm.
because it doesn't matter how much nutrients you're getting to your hair follicle. If that
Mhm.
tunnel is blocked, it can't get anything that it needs.
Right, gotcha.
So they're pretty harmless. In fact, when I taught a hair loss class, like three of the, younger women in my class were like, oh my gosh, one of the TikTok ladies I watch takes that and I'm taking it, like, oh my gosh, is that okay? And I'm like, it's not going to hurt you, but you're
Right.
20. You probably don't
Yeah,
need it.
exactly.
But it's,
Yeah.
it's not going to hurt you. So if
Right.
I have a woman in my chair, or man, but I
Mhm.
typically service more women, who I am noticing that it is on the top of their head in that Christmas tree-ish pattern, or they feel like their part is getting wider. I obviously can't fully diagnose it, but to me, it looks like it could possibly be genetic hair loss. Like, before we invest in the shampoos and other things and everything that might help it grow, let's get you on a DHT block, because nothing's going to help whether you take it internally, you do a cap. If that tunnelway's blocked, you're not going to get any of that nutrients that you're trying to create.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You were talking about minoxidil, and like you said, I tried that for a while, and it's not very practical as far as the topical part. I know it was turning my blonde hair a really weird sort of like yellow highlighter color. It was really odd. And it just was kind of like, it was not ideal to have to apply that every day. So I did ask my dermatologist about oral, and I've been taking oral minoxidil for probably a year. And I'll just say from my own experience, it definitely filled in where it was thin. It did not extend how long it will get. But I'm happy to have more. At least I've got more. I still have permanent bangs. They're just never going to be anything but bangs, but at least there's hair. So I will say that has been really good for me. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was a blood pressure medication at one time, the oral.
I didn't really get into the oral one that much, but
so I think you've got to kind of be okay in that range. But I'm not sure about that. But for myself, I'm taking a low dose of the minoxidil. And so that I can say from that standpoint, is that, I guess the minoxidil is a DHT blocker as well, isn't it? Or
no, and I don't know about the oral, and they might have a DHT blocker in it. But the topical is not a DHT blocker.
Okay.
The topical is just going to force hair that's not wanting to grow. Now, I guess if you're having some sort of blockage there, I mean, you probably also want to take a DHT blocker as well. But the minoxidil, it's more of like a forced thing.
Okay.
It's forcing that hair to grow, where a DHT blocker, and then maybe even the red light diodes kind of a thing, is more like unclogging the the things if you have the blockage, and then having your hair kind of do what it does naturally, but like miracle grow on it kind of. DHT is like pulling it out of bed and making it go.
Got it.
Kind of a thing. And with all that stuff, yes, everyone's like, well, if you stop using it, you're going to lose it all. And it's like, that's true and I hate to say to an extent, because it is true, but I think a lot of people fear that if they miss one or they stop, everything they regrew is just going to automatically just fall out of their head.
Yeah.
Not necessarily true, especially depending on what you had going on to begin with. It's just not going to continue to grow in the way that it was. So like if you're using one of the low light energy systems and you stopped it because your hair was feeling better or whatever, there's a chance that when your hair now goes into its next cycle in the next 100 or so days, and that hair that you had gotten from it grew, it might not grow again. But it's going to just immediately stop growing, shed. It's already doing its thing. If that was what was making your hair come back and you take that away, when it sheds, it might not come back.
Right.
It's not going to just automatically just detach and all your hair is going to fall out.
Right. So just not that continuous benefit that you've been getting. You won't continue to get the same benefit. Yeah, that makes sense. There's so much to the hair loss, the hair loss game, and the hair, and the thinning and all of that type of thing and all of the things. What are the most common causes of hair loss that you see?
So the most common is going to be genetic, and it doesn't necessarily affect the most people, but the other ones are just so subcategorized, I guess. The next I would say would be diffuse alopecia, which is kind of the equal throughout, but that can be caused from so many things, right? That can be caused from stress, a hormone imbalance, trauma, and trauma meaning not pulling it out. That would be different kind of trauma, but I mean like going under anesthesia, having an illness. Everyone talked about COVID hair loss, which sure could have been COVID specific, but also in my opinion, and this is, I like to say it's my opinion, any trauma to your system can cause hair loss. So even a bad case of pneumonia or another illness could cause increased shedding. So it was something sort of new for our system. I think we just saw shedding from it. And I know some people saw long-term effects for that. So I don't have a good explanation for that, obviously. Any sort of, hormone change or shock to our system can cause that diffuse or that shedding throughout. It doesn't even have to be diffuse alopecia. Very circumstantial, usually things like that. So postpartum, starting birth control, stopping birth control, starting a new medication, stopping a medication, stress, sleep loss. We see a lot, I feel like in January when everyone goes on their crash diets, you lose too much weight too quickly. You can have hair loss, which sucks. Trying to do something good for yourself.
Right.
I have seen that happen as well. They saw it with a lot of the people taking the GLP-1s as well. They were losing hair. So usually once your hair or your body balances, so your hormones have changed, your body went through a shock, usually within 90 days of your body balancing, and that's on the longer end, I think, but it's within that 90 days, your hair should start coming back on its own.
Okay.
Not saying that things can come back faster, but nothing's really going to stop the shedding because your body went through a shock of some sort. And so that is going to create that shedding.
There's so much to this, and it's making me see with all of the things that you're saying and just all of the different types of hair loss that somebody can have, all the different causes and all of the different combinations of treatments that can be really customized to each individual person. It seems like the possibilities are endless, but it could also be like trying to find a needle in a haystack in some ways, I think that treating hair thinning, very fine, thin hair loss, that type of thing is a really customized and personalized type of approach. And it sounds like having this trichology educational background now, it can help you to really help your clients to know how to dive in a little bit more deeply to get to the heart of what is actually going on so that they can see some actual real results. Like I said, I just feel like a lot of times they come in and they ask their hairstylist, like, what can I put on it? What can I get? And it kind of goes deeper than that. And there's just, a whole host of things from supplements to devices to hair care to just medications, things like that. So
it's so personal. And I also wanted to be able to give them hope too. It feels like such oh my gosh, I'm losing my hair. I'm going to end up bald. It's very rare, especially for women, that you will end up with totality. I mean, all your hair gone.
Yeah.
But it can feel like that, especially when you're seeing, oh my gosh, I can see so much more of my scalp on my part. It's terrifying.
It's terrifying.
And I want to give them hope. Like, okay, so this looks like it could be genetic hair loss. I can't make any promises, but if it is, this will slow it. This will help.
Right.
Or if it's not, you know what? Good news. Femur pattern baldness is here, not here, or whatever it might be. So I don't think you have that problem. Have you gone through any of these major life changes? Have you been stressed or whatever it might be? Good news. That should help, do this. In the meantime, here's what we can do to help you keep what you have. Or in the meantime, once life kind of calms or whatever it might be, once your hormones rebalance, that should come back on its own. But here's some things that'll help that new hair be the best new hair it can be, kind of a thing. So I feel like that hope is so important because how hard is it to be like, well, just don't stress as you're, losing all your hair.
Right. Because stress could actually be like perpetuating the problem. I don't think people really realize how much stress actually does cause hair loss.
Causes everything.
Causes everything. It just causes everything. And so, but that's such an emotional toll that it can take especially when a woman, I know, guys don't want to lose their hair either, but it can be traumatic really for someone to feel like they're losing their hair because that's so much a part of our identity, our creativity, what we show to the world. And when someone sees us, it sends a message and it's almost like you don't have the control you want to over putting out the message and the what you want to present to the world, and you can't really live your fullest without being able to have your hair as part of an expression of that. And so I do think that that is actually more, it can take more of an emotional toll than people even realize it can. So I love that you are doing this in the salon and helping people in this area, really specializing in it. And that there is hope for women who come in to see their hairstylist, that they could get something beyond just a recommendation of a product off the shelf, because we know it goes beyond just picking out the right home care. And there's so much more to it. And there's so many people out there who have been taking all of the advice from their hairstylist, and they are doing all the things, and they're caring for their hair in the best possible way. And they're still not seeing the results that they're looking for. And they may be going to a stylist who's never actually dealt with any hair loss themselves, doesn't really totally understand that so much. And they may just not be getting the help that they're really needing. If they were looking to find a stylist who specializes in this type of thing, and they're looking for some support on the salon end, while maybe they're also seeking out some medical treatment as well, where would somebody find a stylist that focuses on trichology?
It's so hard because I don't know. There's not, to my knowledge. I mean, I filled out my paperwork and I've tried searching for myself and nothing came up, which is totally fine. But I do think just, looking for, I would start, trichology is kind of building. I would look at a dermatologist, but I would look for a trichologist in my area, especially because I hear a stylist that says they specialize in hair loss, and I would hope that they're on the up and up on it. But I mean, that can mean anything. And depending on what level of loss you're experiencing, you just kind of don't know their background. Just like anything else, you might just have to shop around a little bit, have some consultations. But if you can find a trichologist, hair loss practitioner, or something like that in your area, or even an associate trichologist, they don't have to be like the trichologist. I do know that when one of my clients back in Nashville was looking for the devices, her dermatologist sold them, but she had Googled trichologists in the area and she found a few. So I would always start there, and they might have a better idea of like, these are some stylists I work with, things like that. I think we need to all network a little better with those types of things. But that's how I would honestly start. And looking for someone to help you with that is I would look for a trichologist. Even with the knowledge I have, if I was needing to get a light system, or if I had, oh my gosh, I, can self-diagnose, or I'm looking at my hair and I'm having a problem, I would go to a trichologist still and be like, hey, this is what I think's going on, but can you help me more? Because I still have limited resources.
Right.
I would still go to someone like that, especially if you're noticing severe hair loss. But there's nothing wrong with shopping around, calling local salons, and do you have anyone who specializes in hair loss? And I wouldn't even say fine thin hair if you think you're losing hair. I would say specifically hair loss or people struggling with alopecia, because you put some of those words in there and they're not going to just be like, yeah, we can, sell you something. Which again, home care is very important still. Taking care of things properly is still very important. But there's an underlying cause of something. You're not going to see the results you're promised, and hair loss can already take so long to grow back.
Exactly. If somebody were looking for you specifically, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram. That would be, I would say, the best way to find me. It's just Caitlin Dances 14. That's where I am. And I did want to say, especially because you had asked earlier, there is a woman who I follow. Her name is Abby, Abbey, last name Young, Yung, and she is a trichologist. And I follow her and I look at all of her tips. And what I love is she gives you the science and the why. She'll show you something over the counter, something you can get at the drugstore, and something you can get in salon. She wants options for everybody, which I appreciate, because not everyone has the luxury to,
spend $1 million. Lots of that.
So she's great. She's a good resource for hair loss, as well as the U.S. Trichology Institute also has an Instagram. So
okay, well, that's perfect. And I will make sure and put all of that information in the show notes for everyone to be able to click on, and also your information as well. But Anyways, Caitlin, thank you so much for
Thanks
coming
for
on.
having me.
Yeah, I
I
really
could
appreciate
talk for hours about hair loss.
I know, I could too. We could just talk for hours and
Talk for hours.
hours. But we'll have to have you come back.
Okay, please
Yeah,
do. Please do.
definitely. Thanks a lot, Caitlin. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Bye, Sarah.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Lessons from Your Hairstylist. I hope you found inspiration and actionable insights to embrace your unique beauty and elevate your life. Remember, it's all about taking small steps towards a happier, healthier you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who might benefit from it. Together, let's continue unlocking the secrets to living beautifully fulfilled. Until our next appointment, keep your thoughts on your visions, your self-talk kind, and remember to keep your heart open so you don't miss any opportunities waiting for you out there. I'll see you on the next one.